Good morning. Today I'm going to show you how to make a batch of scones, and I'm going to make chocolate cranberry almond, but you can make whatever you want. I'm just showing you the ingredients that are needed to make the scones, and then I'll show you how to make them. So if you're going to make a full batch of scones, you need 3 cups of flour, a half a cup of sugar, a stick and a half of butter, some fruit and chocolate and nuts or whatever you want to put in your scone. Baking soda, you need a half of a teaspoon of baking soda. You need a teaspoon of vanilla and a teaspoon of salt. You need a tablespoon of baking powder, and then you need a cup of buttermilk. Today, I'm also going to add some almond extract, but you don't need that to make this. So those are the ingredients you need. You need a bowl, and I like to use a wooden spoon to mix when we put in the buttermilk. I generally use my hands to mix the rest of it. Okay, to start making the scones, we are going to set the oven to 425. And let it warm up. So we need this to be preheated. All right, and then we also need to grease a baking sheet or 2. If you're making a full batch, you'll need 2 baking sheets. If you're making a half batch or a third batch, you'll need only 1 greased baking sheet. So this is the instructions for making scones. You need a large bowl and a wooden spoon. And we're going to start just by combining all the dry ingredients. So we're going to put the flour in and the sugar and the salt, baking soda is the small one, and baking powder is more than the baking soda. And then we're gonna stir it around, kind of combine it as best we can, getting the sugar and flour mixed up and all of those good other flavorings in there. All right, so you've got all your dry ingredients in there. If you'd like to sift them together, you could do that as well, but it's not necessary. Then we're gonna add the butter. And I have chopped my butter up into little slices, so it's a little bit easier to mix. And so we're just gonna dump that in. It works best if your butter is at room temperature. I know lots of people make biscuits say it should be cold, but it's easier to mix if you have them a little bit warmer. All right, now we're gonna use your hands to mix. So wash my hands really well, and we're gonna just put our hands in there and kind of squeeze the butter, flour, sugar, all the dry ingredients into the butter. Just kind of squeeze them together, let them run through your fingers, kind of smush the flour into the butter. Just mix that around. And you want it to be sort of like crumbs. So it takes a little while to do this. You just need to squeeze it, make it as a sort of like coarse crumbs. So that's why it's a little bit easier to mix if you've sliced the butter. Just gonna mix that all around. Make sure you don't have a bunch of big chunks of butter in there. That is what you don't want, otherwise you get these little pockets in your scones. So mixing these all around. And making it all kind of crummy, like not crummy, but crumbly. So it looks like crumbs, and it'll stick together because butter is in there, and but it should sort of break apart like that. See how that's breaking apart? You just want to mix that around until it looks like coarse breadcrumbs almost. And once that's mixed, that looks pretty good to me, then we want to add our yummy stuff. So there's some chocolate chips. I mean, I want more chocolate chips than that, and some cranberries for me, and some nuts. And I just kind of eyeball it, and then I mix it around. And when I mix it around, I make sure that it looks like there's a good distribution of chocolate chips and things. Yeah, that's pretty good actually. So you see how it looks kind of like a giant chocolate chip cookie. You want to be able to see that, you know, they're mixed in pretty good. Okay, so that's all mixed around, again, using my hands. Now, this is where we're gonna use the spoon, because otherwise, for a little bit, because otherwise it gets pretty messy. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is add the liquid. So the liquid, I'm using buttermilk. You can use milk. Any kind of milk, doesn't matter. And then I have added some vanilla and a little bit of almond extract to this cup of buttermilk for the full scone recipe. And then you can also add it separately. And then I'm just dumping it in here. And then we're gonna mix it with the spoon. So you're just gonna sort of fold it in, get it mixed around. You're gonna have to use your hands again. At least I like to use my hands. But mix it around until it's pretty mixed in. And so it looks kind of like a big dough. It's pretty hard dough. And then I'm gonna scrape that off. And then I'm just gonna sort of knead it a few times to get all the rest of that butter and flour into the, so what I'm doing is I'm just folding it over, pushing it down into the dry stuff at the bottom of the bowl. You can see I'm moving the pastry sheet underneath here. And then I'm just kind of trying to get everything in there, because what you want is you want it to hold together like a good dough, almost like bread dough. It's actually a little bit stickier than bread dough. It's kind of like cookie dough. It's not as runny as muffin dough and not quite as sticky as cookie dough. So here we go. Now I've got it in, and most of it's out of the bottom of here. I might just shove a little bit more in there and fold it over one more time. Just press down. Okay, now we've got it into a nice ball shape. So you can see it's all sticking together. Most of the stuff is out of my bowl. There's a little cranberry that I should stick in there. But most of it's not sticking to the side of the bowl anymore. We're gonna set that in there for a second. And what we're gonna do for this full batch, I'm gonna take this and split it into about, it's a little bit too big, even thirds. So I'm gonna make 3 about even sized balls of dough. That's about right. And then we're ready to cut them. And so I'm gonna stop the video so I can wash my hands a little, and then I will come back and show you how to cut them and put them on the cookie sheets. Okay, so we're ready to get the scones in the oven. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this ball of dough, one of the 3, or if you're only making a third of a batch, you only need to make 1 ball. We're gonna put the ball, first we're gonna spread a little flour on whatever surface you're gonna use to do this. And what we're gonna do is We're gonna make this into a nice flat circle. So here's this. I'm just gonna press it out. I'm gonna flip it over because then it's floured on that side and it won't stick to my hands quite as much. And I'm just pressing it out into an approximate circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. It'll work no matter how you do this. So maybe about 1/4 of an inch thick. And then I've gotten a little bit of yogurt and some sugar out. I like to glaze these. You do not have to do this. This won't make it any different. I just like to put a little glaze on. And the way that I make this glaze is I take a little pastry brush and I put a little bit of yogurt on it. Then I brush the yogurt on the circle. And it's very thick yogurt. And then once it's brushed on there, we sprinkle a little sugar on it. So here's the sugar. I'm just gonna sprinkle it on. Try to get it covering quite a bit of that. It just makes for a little bit sweeter scone. And then, I forgot to get my knife out. Then we're gonna use a big knife. You can use any kind of knife, but I'm gonna use this big one. And we're gonna cut this like a pie. And we're gonna go like this. So just cut it in one direction and then the opposite direction. So making about a 90-degree angle. And then we're gonna cut it again. And one more time, and you get these nice little triangular scones. Now we're gonna take our cookie sheet, or our baking sheet, and we're gonna place them on there. I like to do it like this, where they're sort of alternating which direction they're facing, so that I can fit them all on this cookie sheet. Well, half of the batch on this cookie sheet. I have to sneeze. Okay, maybe I don't. Okay, and then, there we go. We've got them all on there. Okay, so the scones are cut. There's 24 of them. I've got them on 2 baking sheets, and you can see that my oven is heated. Oops, sorry, I put my finger in the way. My oven is heated to 425, and we're gonna put these in the oven. So you can put them, essentially I have sort of middle of the oven racks in here. We're gonna throw those in there, close the oven, and then we're gonna set the timer for 13 minutes and we'll see how that goes. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the 13 minutes. And so let's take a look at what they look like. Oh, they're getting pretty close. So you see how they're, the ones on the bottom might actually be done. They're getting a little brown around the edges, a little brown on the bottom. I'm gonna leave them in for maybe 2 more minutes and then we'll get them out. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes since we first put them in. I decided I was gonna take out the bottom rack ones, but here are the top rack ones and they're looking really good. I'm gonna pull this out, set it up there, and there we have the scones. And don't forget to turn off your oven because I always do that. So turn off the oven and 24 scones all baked and ready to go. So enjoy. I hope this was a helpful thing for you, and maybe you'll get to try a new recipe while you're in lockdown. Have a great day.